We are so happy to have Paula Preschlack with us today, and we're going to be talking about something that is near and dear to most Montessorians' hearts, which is building parent relationships. And Paula, you are so experienced in this Montessori world, but also building relationships with parents because you've been doing it for 20 plus years, right?
Yes, definitely. And I want to thank you so much for having me today. This is one of my favorite things to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. And we've got a good crew here. So those of you that are here live, I'm going to be watching the chat section. So if you've got any questions as we dive into this, feel free to type in a question or a chat or even a comment as we go through this, because I know that this is going to spark a lot of interest and a lot of thoughts and ideas. And so we want to be able to connect to you as well to make sure that we are, addressing any questions or concerns or ideas that you have. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. All right. So when we're thinking about connecting with parents and building those parent relationships, what comes up for most of us is the issues that we currently face. So Paula, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about your experience of what issues you currently see Montessori schools face when we're looking at building those relationships.
Right. Sure. Well, I think the missed connections, I've had my fair share of experiences that you would call whoops experiences. I've been giving a talk and had someone in the front row, father leaning back, head back, mouth open, snoring loudly in the middle of a presentation. And it's very, very distracting, but realizing right then, oh gosh, not making the connection. I've also had parents say to me over the years, I remember one parent, she wouldn't come to things, and I finally took her for a walk and tried to really find out why. And she said, Paula, I don't get anything out of these talks. I'd rather just fill out my grocery list or, get something done. I don't really need to hear this. And so afterwards, of course, I went home and cried. I felt so badly because you put so much into it. You put so much into these talks. And so it's not so much your pride as it is even just, how did I miss the connection there? So that person ended up being a good friend, and I'm so grateful for that feedback. And I think that's where we need to be really receptive to getting feedback and to, trying to find where we can connect with people. So I think with all of this, the sense of finding what it is that parents need to hear and how we can really make that connection. And so one of the things I've started to do now is really find out where the audience is before I start talking. And that's been really, really a helpful thing, but I can talk more about that later. But those missed connections, I think, is something that happens for all of us. We're not sure why the parents didn't come to the events, why they didn't attend. Sometimes we're not sure what it is that they're looking for. And that leads into some of the other things on the slide there. Attention. I've had people call in the middle of the summer who I thought were so invested in Montessori and love the school, and their children are thriving and everything is great, and they've attended things in the past and everything seems great. And then you get that phone call in the middle of the summer and they say, we just feel like it's time to move on to regular school or something. You think, where did that come from? And often think, gosh, I don't think they really know what it is that they're walking away from. How did I miss the opportunity to keep telling them what their children are getting here so that we can keep that retention? So that's another issue that you have up here on the slide. So question or anything you want to hear more about with that?
Well, I know that we pour so much energy and heart into what we do, especially when it comes to parent events and those community events we have in our school. And then no one comes, or we have a handful of people that come that we know love it, and that's why they come, but they don't truly need it. So how do you connect with those parents that need it, but struggle to attend for whatever reason?
Right. Well, and I think they parents today, we're competing with a lot of other things that they could be at. There are probably 10 other places they feel like they should be, that they could be, that they want to be. And so how do we make our events the thing that they want to come to is a constant question, I think, that we have to look into. But it's, you know, I think when you're planning a talk, the really important thing is you want the whole community to come together. So you have to be thinking about a topic and a way of talking about it that addresses both the people who are brand new, who don't know anything about Montessori, and the people who've been coming for 15 years and kind of know and feel really excited about what you're talking about. It's very hard on parents who've been coming and who buy into it. I hear them say sometimes in other schools, I've heard parents say, it's frustrating when I come to an event and I'm hearing other parents ask questions like, why don't you have computers and why isn't there homework? When we're so far past that, it's just frustrating to have to sit there. And so I don't want to go anymore. It's also frustrating if they come and there's a lot of parent discussion to the point where they feel like I came and now I'm just listening to other parents talk and I really would like to learn something from the school. So I think that's where, you know, when we start getting into the ways to do the continuing education, I can talk a little bit more about that. But I think just laying out these issues, I think most people can probably relate to some of these. The time to do it all, I would say that I think everyone would agree that talking to parents is a really important part of what we do, and we need to make the time to do it because it feeds into the retention and buy-in and people understanding what you're doing. Finding time to do it all, I think it has to be something that you enjoy doing, and that's how you not so much find time, but you make it happen. It becomes a priority. It becomes something that you want to do, is connecting with the parents. So when people say that they struggle to find time to have those events, I think I would say, what else are you doing in your job that maybe could be done by somebody else? Because if you're a head of school or you're a teacher, it's a really important part of our job is that connecting with the parents. For them, I think I was going to talk a little later about the things that we want to make sure they're getting out of the event, and that's how we really pull them in and get them to come.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's good to, you know, think about all of these elements together, because ultimately, Paul, I know you're going to talk about this, but just, you know, situating our job and our position and our role as a leader in the school to connect those parents. You know, there's things that we can do that we love, but also that the parents feel attracted to and connected to. And that's ultimately our goal, right? Is to be able to connect them to the mission of what we do and the magic, not just the mission. I mean, Montessori is truly magic.
Right.
And, you know, the missed opportunities or the missed connections that we have. I'm so excited to hear about some tips that you've got for that.
Yeah. Okay, good. And I think the last thing on your screen there was misunderstanding of Montessori. And definitely we know that's out there. I mean, I think it's a little bit too of, it's not the language that people are used to. Most people coming to our schools didn't have Montessori themselves as children. And so we're constantly trying to explain what it is. And it's a little bit like, you know, using the word Montessori doesn't tell people much because there's so much variety. So it would be as if there was a shoe company, let's say called Basil Shoes, and one person bought Basil shoes and they fell apart in a week, and another person bought them and said, I've had them for 25 years and they're so great. And they're all made so differently, and they're made with different materials, and they don't necessarily function the same way. And so that's a little bit what happens with Montessori. People don't know what they're going to get because there is such a variety of how we're practicing it. So it has to be about your school and what's happening in your school, that you need to explain Montessori and what's happening in your school. And that's where it becomes very personal. But people come in with the brand name not really knowing necessarily what it is, and maybe having a lot of misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you raised that. It's such a good point. Absolutely. All right, let's talk about the parents that we've got now, 21st century parents. I've had some recent conversations with some of our members just about understanding what type of parent is coming at our door now versus 15, 20 years ago, even 5 years ago. You know, things have changed, and they change rapidly, and they continue to change. So we've got a list of 4 things, but it's by no means an exhaustive list of parents in the state that they're in right now. Can you talk a little bit about what you see, Paula, at your school and in your experience?
Yeah, I think, well, at our school, our experiences, parents are extremely busy. We try really hard not to be another thing that parents feel they need to do. So we are all about focusing on the children and simplifying. So we don't have a lot of flyers. We try not to ask people to do a lot of things, volunteer and get involved in things. We more just want people to focus on their children. We want them to focus on their families. We want to encourage them to have family dinners. We want to encourage them to be at home with their children and relax with them and keep their lives as simple as possible. So we're very deliberate about what communication we do have. And we try to keep it real quiet, you know, not a lot of noise, not a lot of background noise. So when they walk in our school, we don't have a bulletin board. We don't have, you know, everything's really, really simple and really direct, a lot of direct communication, face-to-face communication. We don't email with parents unless it's an absolute, we absolutely had to. It was the last resort. But we pick up the phone, we talk to them face-to-face as much as we can. And we really try to keep the communication very direct. Answering emails is a big time consumer. So we've been able to stay that way, a little old-fashioned in that sense, I think. We have 150 students or so. So for schools that are larger, of course, that wouldn't be an option. But parents are so overloaded with information, and they're hearing from, you know, they're reading different books, they're seeing YouTubes, they're getting ideas from all over about how to raise their children, what they want. And so we try to keep our message very simple to try to help them to just keep their lives calm. Really, we talk a lot about being present with our children, being a place where people walk in the building and they know this is going to be a really calm place here. It's a no cell zone at our school. So we ask people not to use their cell phones when they step into the property. We don't want to we try to talk to parents about coming to our events as a way of supporting their children's experience with us, rather than here's another thing that you have to do. And when they see it as a way to directly support their child's experience in the classroom by knowing more about what happens in the classroom and being able to take some of those ideas home to support their children from home, they want to come and they want to hear more about that. So.
Yeah, so I love that you have a cell phone free zone. Do you get some feedback from parents? I mean, are they also loving that, or do you get pushback?
They do really love that they can walk in and know that while they're there, they're going to have an experience of talking to other people, and there aren't going to be a lot of phones ringing and people running out of the room to take a call and things like that. It just brings the whole mood to really being present. I had to say to somebody this morning as they were walking in, we greet at the door when people come in, and they can park and they bring their children into the school. So we have a lot of that face-to-face because of that. And a babysitter was walking in with the children. She had earbuds and some kind of earbud thing right in both ears. And I was like, oh, out, because we want people to be present. It's a safety issue. We want them to be able to hear what's going on around them, pay attention to the children, get down on their level, speak and pronounce words carefully to them, and really make that human connection for the children's sake. So when parents come to our school and they have that first tour and they kind of pick up, what we're all about, that's the moment. That's the moment for them to understand what we're all about, rather than kind of, you have to try to change the culture of your school. That's hard to do. We've been lucky enough to be able to just retain the culture of our school and maintain it and not kind of give in to some of these things. But it's a grace and courtesy as far as we're concerned. It's Montessori grace and courtesy. So if you keep focused on that, if there's a reason for something, people are usually pretty willing to get on board with that.
Yeah. So I get a lot of feedback from schools and from parents when they walk into a classroom and observe. They get that feeling of, wow, that awe, right? When you walk in and it's quiet, it's peaceful, it's purposeful. So you're creating that atmosphere even before going into the classroom.
Right.
Parents know the moment they walk into the door
Mm-hmm.
that this is what we do in our community.
Right. From the time they're getting out of the car.
Right.
So, and it's just a matter of communicating and talking about that, finding the words. And that's where, I say I've had a lot of my fair share of whoops experiences. I mean, it's just years and years of, oh, that didn't go over so well, or, oh, they didn't understand what I meant there, or, oh, now they think I'm this or that, So just continually trying to hone the message, right? And find the ways of expressing and explaining to people, finding a better and better and better way of explaining it. So it's just a matter of that.
Yeah. And I think, parents in this world today need that breath of fresh air. Mm-hmm. And they're desperately grasping for some simplicity in their lives. I'm a parent of 2 young children under 5, and even being a Montessorian, I'm still looking for that, that need to just breathe and be. We all have that need to connect. And if you are lucky enough as a parent to find a Montessori school that truly embraces that same value, what a gift.
Right. And the parents feed off each other. They've all come because that appealed to them. So now that they're together and we're sitting in a group, they kind of get each other, they support each other. We talk about, someone will say, well, I've got a lot of this technology going on, and what other ideas do people have? Oh, we did this, try that. But they're supporting each other. It has to be a non-judgmental, bring your issues here so that we can talk them through. And, I'm a parent myself, and I've been through it all too. So being able to tell those stories and being able to be humble and show the ways to each other of how we're working with things that helps everybody to help each other and to feel that this is a place where we're all growing.
Yeah. There's so much parent judgment in the world, right? And to be able to find parents that can empathize with what you're experiencing and feel comfortable enough to share that, it's again a layer of relationship building that we need to recognize and connect with.
Mm-hmm. And it always comes back to the children. It's always for the children's benefit. Everybody understands that. So everything we talk about, we bring it back to why we're doing this and why it's connected with the children. Every parent wants their children to do well and wants to connect with their children. So it's always a safe place to go to.
Right. Well, and this is a good segue into our next slide, which, talking about the parents that we work with.
Yes.
So Paula, given what we know about parents and what we've talked about, what are parents motivated by when they seek out relationships with those in care of their child, right? Because we're ultimately in care of what is throughout the day and inside and very invested in the relationship. What are they motivated by?
I think that parents express this in different ways. They might say, I want my children to be happy, or I want my child to go to Harvard, or whatever it is that they say. I've found really it comes down to 2 things, I think, which is that parents are really motivated by the question, how do I know my child is getting what they need to succeed in life? I want to make sure that's happening. And how can I be a better parent? And so every time we speak to them, whether it be in a conference or on the phone or in a presentation that we're giving, if we can be aware of this need that parents have for these 2 questions to be addressed, and you don't have to talk about the questions, and you don't have to say it. It doesn't have to be, it can be very subtle, but if you as a speaker are focused and geared towards making sure that you're talking to those 2 questions, then you're going to satisfy the parents. I mean, they really want to walk away every time feeling like I learned something that I'm going to take back home and I'm really excited to try it. Or I feel really good that my child is in this Montessori school. I mean, that's what we ultimately want them walking away with. We want them to know that this school is meeting their children's needs for success, that this, what they're getting here is going to lead to them being successful in life. So that I think is a really good guide. It's been a guide for me, and I try to remind teachers of that, or anyone who's about to give a presentation. Really make sure that you're speaking to these, because you can talk about the human tendencies and the sensitive periods and the absorbent mind or normalization, and sometimes you'll get a lot of glazed over eyes. You take out your theory album, and people really just want to know, is my child getting what they need to succeed in life, and how can I be a better parent? And so everything we talk about, we want to connect it to this.
Yeah. Paula, I'm also thinking about the unhappy parent. When a parent is unhappy for whatever reason, if we can come back to these two questions, which I absolutely love, because I think they hit exactly what the motives are for parents. If you've got a parent who's unhappy about something that happened in the classroom, can you come back and see, well, is this question answered for them? And you might have to answer it again and again, especially as the child progresses through first plane to second plane to third plane. And I know your school has an adolescent program, so I imagine, this question comes up, these questions come up often.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Paula, what do we do? What do we do? So I want to ask you, what is the single most important thing a Montessori school can do to connect parents to our mission, to what we're doing?
A single thing, I would just say communication, and everything would fall under that. We get our training, and we have directions of what we should be doing in the classroom with children. So we go into our classrooms and we start doing those things. And then the next step is to communicate to parents and to others what it is that we're doing, what we're seeing, the miracles, as you say, that we see every day with children. So anecdotes are really powerful. But I think, one of the things we really have to be thinking about is that when people are looking for a preschool for their children, or any school at any point, and I come from a community where there's a lot of pressure. We have great public schools in our area. We have great private schools in our area. There's a lot of competition. And we have parents who want the best of the best of the best, right? So they're constantly looking around for what might be better. It sort of keeps you on your toes. And I think that communicating your message is very important because of that. So you have to realize that when somebody comes to look at a Montessori school and they're looking at preschools, any preschool or any public school or any private school that's conventional in your area, they're going to understand what they're talking about. I mean, they're going to be speaking in plain English. They might use phrases that are sort of vague. They might not actually even deliver on some of the things that they say, but it doesn't matter. It's all English, and the parents get it and they can understand it. And so they're always at our Montessori school hearing about all these great things happening at the other schools from their friends and so on. And they understand because it's in plain English. When we talk in Montessori terms, it can be really confusing. So I was just saying, we don't want people to feel like they need to have a PhD to understand what we do in Montessori. So we have to take what we do and use very simple language. There are ways to talk, about human tendencies, about sensitive periods, about anything, and convey it in a language that parents can understand. So for instance, I talk to parents about self-formation, that Montessori is very different from the outset because it's a completely different paradigm. Instead of seeing a child as an empty vessel to be filled with information and try to stuff the knowledge in there, in Montessori, we look at the whole learner, and that the child is learning from the environment and building themselves, quite literally building themselves. And people can understand that. They can understand the idea that, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. my child is building their own self. They're building their own person, and they're taking from the environment and all that information to do that. So that's a way of taking an idea like self-formation and making it very simple for people to understand, using simple language to convey what it means. So using simple language is really important. I would say, so that's on the slides there, you'll see the self-formation paradigm. That's what I always tell people. Everyone has to find their own way of describing and explaining Montessori that makes sense to that person, to be able to make a connection with someone else. But what I have found helps me is to help people to understand that paradigm shift first, that we're looking at this paradigm that the child forms themselves. And that means that the entire structure of the education is different. So now that we're not trying to get the information in there in this feeding way, everything you do in conventional school matches that model, right? But now what helps people after they understand that paradigm is that in order for this to happen, in order for the child to build themselves, they need three things. They need a prepared environment that's going to present them with everything that they're going to need for building themselves. They're going to need an adult who can model behavior for them, link them to the environment, and maintain that environment, prepare and maintain that environment. And they're going to need freedom and responsibility, which you can think of as a balance of choices and boundaries. And those freedoms and responsibilities are provided by the environment that's been prepared. Some of them are just part of the environment, and being presented from the adult. The adult gives choices and the adult gives boundaries, and that's what makes it work. So that's sort of Montessori in a nutshell. And then anything that I'm going to talk about in terms of, I just think, just keeping it that simple for people, and for them to, then anything I'm going to talk about, that's sort of like a framework that for me works to understand Montessori. So I'll give that framework and remind people of that very simple framework before every talk that I'm giving. And then shoot into, okay, today we're going to talk about choices and boundaries. Today we're going to talk about something with the environment. Today we're going to talk about the adult and how we link children to the environment. Whatever it is that you're going to talk about, it helps people to come back to a framework that's so simple and so basic. And I think Montessori, part of the beauty of Montessori is its simplicity. So another person might have another way of describing it or something else that feels right to them. But whatever it is, have your way and your framework that you can keep going back to. And I think that's really helpful. Because one of the things I'll say is when you think about other schools in the area and the message and the mission, I've noticed over the years that they change quite a bit, some of them. So, they'll have this big thing going on for 5 years, and then this next thing for 7 years, and then this thing for 3 years, and then 1 year this, and then that. And I think one of the strengths of our school has been that we've been able to be consistent and say, this is Montessori, this is what we do. And yes, it changes with the times, but this is the same thing that we're doing because it works. And I think that consistency is really important. So having a framework like that can be really, really helpful.
Wonderful. Paula, have you gotten into the ideas of things what you do at your school that you found to be really helpful in connecting with parents and giving them a good framework so that they can truly engage with your school and then eventually turn into these like raving fans of your school who they never want to leave?
Well, we hope, right? I mean,
that's the goal.
It's never perfect. I'll tell you about 5 things that we do, and telling people about this is just a way, hopefully, to give them ideas, things to try, but also someone might hear something here that they think this wouldn't work for my school, but I can think of an offshoot of that, or I can think of another way we could do something like that, or just get the wheels turning. So I hope this is helpful. The first is what we call continuing education events. So these are our parent education events, and we don't call it parent education because we've just felt like that was sort of patronizing. I mean, some of these people are CEOs, they're PhDs, they're really intelligent people. Everyone's intelligent in my opinion anyway. But they feel a little awkward. Why do I need to be educated, right? So we call it continuing education because to us, it's about all of us as adults, all of us included, learning together and to continue learning. It's a lifelong journey. And this is an example that we're giving for our children, is that we come together to learn too. So those continuing education events are in the evenings. They fall on Tuesday evenings in our school. I think most schools have one night that parents can get used to is on the calendar, that might be the night that an event might be held on. And we do roughly 3 or 4 a year in the evenings where it's the whole school is invited. And we'll talk about a topic that really can bridge people who are new, people who've been there many, many times, people who have young children, people who have older children, some topics that can bridge the wide range in your audience. So those are probably a little more common to most schools. We also do what we call, or offer what we call, coffee discussions. And this is where we take the whole school body of parents and divide them up into smaller groups and send out invitations. Each person would get an invitation to a person's home, and we'll ask parents to host in their home. In our school, we can divide the whole school up into 3 or 4 groups. So they'll be invited to one of these 4 coffees. Each one is hosted in a different parent's home. And I come, and everyone has the first few minutes to socialize with each other, get some coffee, some muffin or whatnot, and sit down in the living room. And then I'll give a brief, very brief, maybe 15-minute presentation of a topic that I think interests people today. So it might be something happening in the news, happening in our culture, might be something happening in the school where we've heard some concerns that people want to talk about this issue. Whatever it is, I'm thinking about those 2 questions that parents have. How's my child going to succeed, and how can I be a better parent? And I'll speak to that, and then we'll have an open discussion. And it's a chance for people to get to know each other, parents to bond with each other. I want them to walk away feeling inspired going back into their lives. And again, always feeling really good about the community they've chosen and about the school they've chosen. So those coffee discussions include everyone, and we give them usually once a season, but it just depends on the need. If something's sort of brewing, we can sense people really need some attention, we'll call together some coffees. If everything's going really smoothly and it seems like everything's great, we'll sort of wait. And then we see that it's a good time of year to get everyone together again. Then we'll do some coffees again. So usually it's 3 in the spring, 3 in the winter, 3 in the fall. 3 in the fall, 3 in the winter, 3 in the spring. But those 3 would be the same topic. So the fall would be the same topic, winter would be the same topic, and the topic changes just depending on what's happening in the culture and what's going on in the world. So the third thing that addresses the whole school, and we just started doing this in the last couple of years, and I actually don't do these, a colleague of mine, Elisa Ward, leads these book discussions. And so this is where we choose a book, such as Wired Child, about technology with children, Road to Character, Gift of Failure, How to Raise an Adult, some book that might be interesting to our parents about parenting or education or anything happening with children, maybe even a Montessori book. And people can sign up for the book discussion, read the book, and come to either a morning gathering or an evening gathering of that book discussion. And Elisa will lead people through a discussion of the book. And what's great about this is it's been very popular. People love to get together. They love to talk about something that they've read or that's on their mind. They love to get to know each other better. And we are always there to give a little bit of the Montessori perspective on the topic. So they always learn something that has to do with, and here's how we help children learn to read in our classrooms, or here's why the homework from Forest Bluff is reading for pleasure, or whatever it is, we can tie it in, and that enriches the discussion. So the book discussions have been really popular. So those are continuing education evenings, the coffee discussions, and the book discussions. And then there are two other things we do regularly that are for the children, the parents of the youngest children and the parents of the very oldest children, because these are two more vulnerable times that are very challenging for parents under the age of 3, infancy and very early years. Parents have a lot of questions and they need a lot of support. And we found that having talks that are just for them really helps them to bond with each other, to meet regularly, to look to the school as a source of information, and to really understand the school. So we call those the Montessori from the Start lectures and practical sessions. And this is for parents with children under the age of 3. The families who are already enrolled in the school, in the toddler program, for instance, they're expected to come to this as part of their introduction to the school, but it's open to the public. So people can come who just had a baby, people can come who want to find out more about the school. So that's the Montessori from the Start lectures. And what's important there, I think, too, is that every time we're together with parents, we see that as an opportunity to connect them to the whole picture. So we'll talk about the youngest children and ideas of things to do at home with them and why they have a sense of order and what is helpful to them and ways to handle things at home and so on. But we're always connecting it to where it will go next. So we talk a little bit about primary age children. We talk a little bit about how elementary children are different and where it's going to go, and maybe even something about adolescence. And it's just a couple comments or maybe an anecdote, but it helps parents to always be thinking ahead and to see their children in the context of this journey, and to understand the school better and realize, oh, I am going to want them to still be here in elementary. I am going to still want them to be here in the adolescent years, because this is where it's going to go. And this is just so wonderful. And it gives them a chance to ask questions about all those things. So the last that I'll talk about here is the secondary level evenings and teas. So our adolescent program is called the secondary level. And again, parents of adolescents, we've found over the years, really need more time and attention and a chance to talk and understand their children. And so those evenings happen about once a month. I don't give the presentation for that. The teachers themselves do, the secondary level teachers. We'll talk about the characteristics of the adolescents, the needs that they have, what's happening in the classroom, trips that they go on, and so on. And then the teas are gatherings that are like the coffees, only they're in the afternoon instead of the morning, so we call them teas. And we'll have some coffee or tea and a muffin or something and get together in someone's house. And it's just the parents of the adolescents. So everything for secondary level is just those parents. So it becomes a tight-knit group of people who are able to support each other and support the students that way as a community. And those teas are times when I'll talk a little bit again about Montessori's perspective on adolescence, about what we might be doing at home to help them, about preparation for high school, answering questions, and letting people come together. We actually have these trips in our program so that when they come back from a trip, the children come back from a trip is when we do the teas. So they're about 3 times a year. So those are all the different formats.
Yeah, as you're talking about this, you know what popped in my mind, and this is so very Montessori of me to say, but it's almost like you're normalizing the parent. Mm-hmm. You know, as we work so hard in our communities to normalize, you know, the younger child to integrate into a community so that when they, you know, are in that third year, they become those leaders. It's almost like you're creating a journey or offering a journey for these parents to go through a process of truly connecting. And I wonder if, you know, as you support them along the way, did those older parents, those wiser parents, I guess you could say, connect back to the younger ones as well?
Yeah,
do you
definitely.
See that?
And then they'll see each other at a coffee where we mixed up the ages deliberately, or we mixed up where they, you know, that they weren't people who were going to bump into each other in the parking lot necessarily or anywhere. And they get to know each other through those coffees. So those coffees are a way of continually connecting people to each other, but definitely. And I think You know, it is a journey where every year when new parents come, I always say to them, you know, this is a really exciting moment for us because as a school, we're meeting you for the first time and we know we're going to be together for like 17, 18 years. But to you, you're just thinking, you know, that you're finding a school. But to us, we see this long journey ahead. And having that continuity is not only helpful for the children because they go all the way through. We see them at all the different stages of their childhoods. And so we don't get as overly concerned about a 6-year-old having an issue because we've seen so many 6-year-olds have issues that were then okay when they were 12, you know. So you have the experience of going through these cycles over and over, and it gives you a lot of clarity, and you're able to have a longer view, and you're able to have foresight, and you're able to be confident so that you can reassure parents. And then it happens for the parents too. They're able to look back and say, gosh, you know, it all worked out in the end. And they're able to tell some of the newer parents, gosh, you know, I felt the same way, but I'm telling you, it all works out in the end. I had a parent come up to me about 2 weeks ago, and this was a parent who'd given us a hard time. I mean, she really gave us a run for our money in terms of, you know, I want to know this and why that, and why do you do it this way? And, you know, there were times when, you know, she was really, we spent a lot of, you know, sweat, right, trying to respond to these questions. And she came up to me in the hallway, and she's had a couple children. She has 4 children, so a couple of them have gone on to high school and are about to start college, and the younger ones are, you know, pretty far along in the school. And she came up to me and she said, you know, Paula, I just want to turn and say to everyone, forget about academics. It's not about the academics. And I was thinking, I just wanted to laugh because so many times, why aren't we using this textbook? And how come, you know, she said, you know, I just want to tell people it's about the spirit of who your children become. And I'm so amazed by my children, and I see it in them. I see the Forest Bluff in them. I see the Montessori in them. And there is nothing more convincing than watching your child go through this college process and saying, I got it. I know what I need. I know what I want. I'm going to go do it. And to be able to sit back as a parent and say, wow, look how independent they are. So she wants to share with other people, you know, her experiences. So that is really powerful.
Absolutely. And this is actually a really good segue into looking ahead, because what it sounds like is that, you know, all of the work that you've done, the years and years of working with this parent in particular has really paid off, because,
right.
You know, we, along their parenting journey, there's so much that they take in. Mm-hmm. And just like with a child, you know, we have to circle back. And as they grow, we circle back to these concepts, and eventually they'll catch on. Mm-hmm. But Paula, when we look ahead for our schools, let's say, you know, the people that are attending and our members have listened to this webinar, what are the benefits of investing heavily into building these parent relationships and truly connecting them to your mission? What are the benefits?
Well, retention for sure. Having children arrive in the morning ready to be there. You know, they're coming from homes where parents are on board about sleep and nutrition and after school activities and reading and family time, and encouraging their children to pitch in and be a part of the family life, be a part of the home life. These are all things we talk about when we get together with parents. And because we're consistent, we're not changing the message. The message is the same. You know, for 35 years, we've been saying the homework at Forest Bluff for children, the homework is to help your family by contributing in the home and reading for pleasure. And we're hoping that they get downtime, that they have time in nature, they have time together, and so on. But when that is consistently the homework, so to speak, people start to understand that. So in other words, the classrooms are smoother. You know, children are ready to be there. They're happy. They hear their parents being positive about the school instead of, oh, that, you know, teacher, and why is that happening? You know, they sense a positive energy, and that all pays off. Your conferences are more to the point. Everyone's growing together. Your phone conversations can be more to the point, and you're not going back trying to explain over and over again from the beginning. Wait a minute, you don't understand this because there's all this stuff that comes before this. And then when you understand that, you're going to understand why we're asking you to do this. So when you're continually feeding information to parents, it just gets better and better. Now, that's not to say that we don't have issues and we don't have problems. We have just as many problems as the next school. We really do. But I think this is something that is really enjoyable, and that all the teachers and everyone who works in our school feels really good about, which is that we're clear about what we're trying to do in our parent communication. A couple things that slides here, this whole school tours. I just wanted to say that when parents come to see our school, we take them on a tour through, just an individual tour just for that family alone, through the whole school all the way to the adolescents, because we want them to see the whole journey. And every time they ask for a tour, we show them through the whole journey, because we want them to see why each level leads to the next and how they support and benefit each other. Every time we write a letter to parents, we're always spelling out the expectation that they're going to stay. We understand that that your intention is to stay through the 8th grade. So that's really a part of the language. And then I already talked earlier about the face-to-face communication, keeping that going.
Perfect. Paula, this is so good. I know, we've got quite a few attendees today, so I want to leave just a little bit of time for any questions that may have come up. Or comments or ideas. So if you are here, please go ahead and chat in any questions for the lovely Paula. She is so incredibly knowledgeable. So again, if you've got any questions for Paula, or even comments, or ideas of what do you do at your school? What are some things that work well for you? Any takeaways? We'd love to hear them.
Can I chime in with a question while we're waiting for a more legitimate one?
Yes.
Okay. So Paula, I'm the evil marketer, and I'm curious from your perspective, because you obviously know a lot, and I think you've learned a lot along the way. Is there anything that we can provide as a resource to members that might not be as far along in their journey that you think would help them accomplish some of the tasks that you've outlined today? Is there kind of like a packet or something you feel like Needle Marketing could create that we could make available to people who are just getting started out?
Right. Well, I sort of think of it as the way I'm trying to start talks more and more these days, which is asking questions first. Trying to find out where people are and what they think, what they need first before I even start talking. So I'll say something about that, since it has to do with our topic, and maybe it'll give you an idea for what you're asking, which is, when I start a coffee discussion, for instance, I like to try to get everybody to say something, sort of get their voice out into the room before I even start talking. It's a way of reading the room before you start, because you don't know what it is they need to hear that day, and their minds might be in a really different place. But for instance, lately we gave a series of coffees that were about reading at home and reading aloud to children. And I started out by saying, before I start talking about the topic from a Montessori perspective, would you each share with us your name, the ages of your children, and what was reading like for you at home when you were growing up? What do you remember about reading? And it was so powerful. I mean, there are people in the room that I've known for many years, and I never knew that, they grew up on a boat, or, that their mother was a linguist, or that their parents never read to them, or whatever it was. And so every time you find out where people are coming from, and you find out, you get an idea of what they might need to hear. So I'll do that a lot with Montessori from the Start lectures. I'll start out by saying, is there some question that you might have, a burning question, before I start? And I'll ask them for their name and their question, and I won't start answering it. I'll just go all the way around the room. And then I'll start the talk and try to answer the questions while I'm talking. And it just relieves that tension for them. That's why they're there. They have this question. But I wonder if that would be something to do first. I don't know what other people need. So, from a packet or from information, but finding out first can be really helpful.
Absolutely. And it's an unfair question, because really what I'm asking you to do is try to bottle your genius, but it's the question I have to ask. It's part of our role and what it is we're providing. But I think that's a great answer. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. There's no genius. You're all being so, complimentary, but really it's just, it's just trial and error year after year. And I think one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this topic, and I love to talk about communicating with parents and explaining Montessori, is that it's really hard to do. And I think that it's really important, and it's something I'm really passionate about. And when you're passionate about something, you keep going at it again and again and again. And if someone isn't really passionate about it, their strengths can be in other areas, like maybe just in the classroom, and someone else needs to be out, in front trying to communicate to people. But I think that's where, you talked earlier about finding the time. How do you find the time for all these things? It's, what's most important and what are you really passionate about? It has to be something you enjoy.
Well, Paula, we don't have any questions from our attendees. And I know that we've taken quite a bit of your time, and you are a busy, busy woman. But I just wanted to thank you for the time that you've invested in preparing for this call, and also just sharing your thoughts, your wisdom, your experience. We're so lucky to have you as a part of our Montessori community, and we're just so grateful.
Thank you so much. And I think Nido marketing is so wonderful, what you offer people and the way that you are helping schools and helping the message of Montessori, and just so welcoming, and everything you've done, all of your marketing has just been really, really incredible and so needed. And so I'm so grateful to you all for inviting me today, but also for providing this to so many schools. It's just incredible. It's really terrific. So thank you for everything you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And so next week, we host these every week. I think we might look into another solution, because we've been having issues with Easy Webinar. So stay tuned to that. Hopefully we won't have these issues in the future. But next week, we are going to be talking about the changes that we've made. So if you haven't noticed, we just launched yesterday our new pricing page, which allows you to actually choose specific services that we offer and buy them a la carte versus being a plain member. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility if, say, you're farther along in your marketing journey and you really just want content, you have the option to buy content. Or if you want to, take a few steps, step 1, step 2, step 3 of getting your school up and ready and positioned well for marketing. So we will go over that all next week. So please do join us for that. And again, Paula, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Deneen.
All righty. Take care, everyone.